where the mighty dragons of legend once ruled the skies and the deep places of the earth. These fearsome creations of Morgoth were not only creatures of immense power, but embodiments of greed, cunning, and destruction. From the blazing fury of Glaurung, the father of dragons, to the cold malice of Smaug, their presence shaped the histories of elves, dwarves, and men across the ages. Before we continue, I want you, my dear listener, to comment down below where you're from and what time it currently is. In this exploration, we delve into their origins, their devastating role in the First Age, and their enduring legacy into the Third. Each dragon, whether soaring on wing or crawling through the depths, left a mark on Middle-earth's fate. So, sit back and let the echoes of these ancient beasts guide you into the heart of their fiery tale. Long before the fires of war engulfed Middle-earth, when the world was still young, Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, sought to bend all creation to his will. Once the mightiest of the Ainur, Morgoth had turned from the harmony of Iluvatar's designs, desiring dominion over Arda. His corruption spread like a blight, and in his efforts to subjugate the free peoples, he brought forth creatures of unparalleled malice to serve him. Among his most fearsome creations were the dragons, beings of fire and shadow, wrought to spread terror and destruction. The origins of the dragons are shrouded in mystery, for Morgoth's craft was dark and twisted, while other Ainur, like Aule, shaped their works with care and reverence for the natural order. Morgoth sought to pervert it. The dragons were designed as instruments of war, their creation an act of defiance against the beauty and balance of the world. Morgoth poured his malice into their making, infusing them with the essence of his own hatred. They were not born of Iluvatar's song, but of Morgoth's will, their existence a stain upon Arda's harmony. The first of the dragons was Glaurung, who came to be known as the Father of Dragons. Glaurung was a fire drake, a massive, serpentine creature who crawled upon the ground and belched forth flames. His presence heralded a new age of fear in Middle-earth, for he combined the brute force of Morgoth's earlier creations with an unprecedented level of cunning and malevolence. Glaurung's debut during the Dagor Bragalik, the Battle of Sudden Flame, marked a turning point in Morgoth's campaign against the elves. He tore through their defenses with devastating power, leaving ruin in his wake. Morgoth continued to refine his designs after Glaurung's initial appearance. The dragons represented the peak of his ability to twist the natural order into something wholly his own. They were his weapons of terror, designed not only to destroy but to instill dread. Morgoth understood that fear could often achieve what sheer force could not, and the mere sight of a dragon was enough to break the resolve of even the bravest warriors. The creation of the dragons was also an extension of Morgoth's philosophy: to dominate through corruption. Just as he had twisted elves into orcs and great spirits into balrogs, so too did he take the raw potential of Arda and shape it into something monstrous. It is unclear whether dragons were crafted entirely by Morgoth, or if they were bred from existing creatures, but their connection to his will was absolute. The dragon's emergence in the First Age gave Morgoth a decisive advantage in his wars. Their sheer destructive power overwhelmed the Free Peoples, and their presence on the battlefield changed the course of entire conflicts. The elves of Beleriand, despite their valor and skill, were hard-pressed to defend against such foes. Morgoth unleashed Glaurung and his ilk at pivotal moments, turning battles in his favor and forcing his enemies to retreat before the onslaught. While Glaurung was the first, he was not the last. Morgoth continued to perfect his designs, leading to the eventual creation of dragons with wings, such as Ancalagon the Black. The emergence of winged dragons, with their ability to take to the skies, marked a significant evolution in their kind. But this came only later in Morgoth's reign. The origins of the dragons were steeped in Morgoth's insatiable desire to dominate and destroy. From the first fiery breath of Glaurung to the terror wrought by his successors, these creatures embodied the malice of their maker. Their creation was not just a physical act, but a symbolic one, a reflection of Morgoth's rebellion against the light and order of Arda. As Morgoth's influence grew, so too did the diversity of his creations. Dragons began to take on varied forms, each uniquely suited to the role they would play in his plans for domination. Their evolution as instruments of war and fear laid the foundation for the devastation they would bring in the battles of the First Age and beyond. With the rise of dragons, Morgoth's war machine gained a new and terrible power. The Free Peoples faced not only the physical destruction wrought by these creatures, but the psychological toll of their presence. Yet as devastating as the dragons were, they were only the beginning of Morgoth's designs, a dark chapter in the long history of his rebellion. As Morgoth refined his dark craft, the dragons he created began to take on distinct forms, each designed to fulfill specific roles in his war against the Free Peoples of Middle-earth. These creatures, terrible in power and cunning, came to be classified by their physical and elemental traits, which evolved over time. From the earliest fire drakes to the winged dragons of the later First Age, each type brought its own brand of destruction to the battlefield, spreading fear and chaos wherever they roamed. The first and most infamous type of dragon, the fire drakes, or Uroloki, were creatures that breathed fire, making them devastating tools of destruction. These dragons did not possess wings in their earliest forms, instead slithering and crawling across the earth like massive serpents. Glaurung, the father of dragons, was the foremost example of a fire drake. His ability to unleash torrents of flame was matched by his immense size and strength, enabling him to destroy fortresses and armies with ease. Glaurung set the standard for what fire drakes could achieve. Not only raw physical power, but also psychological warfare, as the destruction they wrought often left survivors demoralized and broken. The term Uruloki specifically refers to fire-breathing dragons, and though Glaurung himself was wingless, later fire drakes were capable of flight. These later dragons combined the fiery devastation of their kind with the tactical advantage of the skies, marking a significant evolution in Morgoth's designs. Unlike their fiery counterparts, cold drakes lacked the ability to breathe fire. Instead, they relied solely on their immense physical strength, their thick, armored hides, and their natural ferocity to overpower their enemies. Though they were considered less devastating than fire drakes in terms of raw, destructive capability, cold drakes were no less fearsome in battle. Cold drakes became particularly prominent in the Second and Third Ages, long after Morgoth's defeat. They were especially noted for their attacks on the dwarves of the Grey Mountains, where they laid waste to many of their halls and hoarded the treasures of their victims. The absence of fire breathing did not diminish the terror they inspired, as their relentless hunger for wealth and their ability to crush even the most fortified defenses made them a persistent threat. The most advanced and fearsome of Morgoth's creations were the winged dragons, introduced late in the First Age. These creatures combined all the devastating traits of their predecessors: immense size, incredible strength, and the ability to breathe fire, with the unparalleled advantage of flight. The first and greatest of the winged dragons was Ancalagon the Black, whose appearance marked a turning point in Morgoth's strategy. His colossal size and terrifying presence made him the most powerful of all dragons, setting a new standard for devastation. Morgoth's reliance on winged dragons reflected his need for a decisive advantage as the First Age neared its end. Their ability to dominate both land and sky made them unmatched on the battlefield. But their emergence was short-lived, as their greatest battles also marked their demise. The progression from fire drakes to winged dragons reflects Morgoth's continuous refinement of his creations. In the early days, dragons like Glaurung were formidable but limited in their mobility, confined to crawling across the land. Over time, Morgoth improved their design, adding wings and enhancing their physical capabilities to make them even more effective weapons. This evolution also mirrored Morgoth's increasing desperation, as his dominion over Middle-earth was challenged by the Valar and their allies. He poured more of his malice and cunning into the dragons, pushing their abilities to their limits. The winged dragons represented the peak of his designs, combining the traits of previous generations with the ability to dominate both land and sky. Despite their power, dragons were never numerous. Morgoth's designs were complex, and the process of creating these creatures likely required immense effort and resources. Dragons were not a common sight on the battlefield. Instead, they were deployed strategically, their appearances calculated to achieve maximum impact. Even after Morgoth's defeat and the end of the First Age, dragons remained rare. The surviving fire drakes and cold drakes became scattered, retreating into the remote regions of Middle-earth. By the Third Age, only a few dragons remained, with Smaug standing out as the last great dragon. The diversity of dragons ensured that their terror endured across the ages. From the fiery devastation of fire drakes to the crushing might of cold drakes and the aerial dominance of winged dragons, each type inspired a unique kind of fear. Their legacy was not only one of destruction, but also of dread, as the mere rumor of a dragon's presence was enough to unnerve entire kingdoms. The knowledge that these creatures could strike from above, below, or within fortified strongholds left an indelible mark on the histories of elves, men, and dwarves. The variety among Morgoth's dragons reflected his relentless pursuit of perfection, with each type playing a crucial role in his war against the Free Peoples. From the lumbering power of fire drakes to the airborne menace of winged dragons, their influence shaped the history of the First Age. It was during this age that the dragons left their greatest mark, with Glaurung and Ancalagon standing as symbols of Morgoth's destructive ambition. As Morgoth's designs grew in complexity and power, the First Age became the stage for the dragon's most devastating roles. Introduced as instruments of terror and destruction, these creatures reshaped the course of history with their immense strength and cunning. While Glaurung, the father of dragons, first emerged as Morgoth's harbinger of ruin, it was the later arrival of Ancalagon the Black that marked the peak of their might. Together, these creatures left an indelible mark on the First Age, embodying the malice and ambition of their creator. The debut of dragons in the wars of the First Age began with Glaurung, a creature of fire and dread. Crafted by Morgoth in the depths of Angband, Glaurung was the first of his kind, a fire drake of immense size and power. His serpentine form and ability to unleash devastating flames set him apart from any other being in Middle-earth. But it was his mind, keen, manipulative, and utterly malicious, that made him truly fearsome. Glaurung first emerged during the Dago Pagolak, the Battle of Sun Flame. This battle, one of the great turning points of the First Age, saw Morgoth unleash rivers of fire and his deadliest forces upon the Free Peoples of Beleriand. Glaurung, leading the charge, shattered elven fortifications and scattered their armies. His presence alone enough to break the resolve of even the bravest warriors. He did not simply destroy, he sowed despair, and his fiery path left ruins where once stood great cities and fortresses. While his physical might was unparalleled, Glaurung's true weapon was his intelligence. He was more than a beast. He was a strategist, capable of exploiting the weaknesses of his enemies. This was most evident in his encounter with Túrin Turambar, one of the greatest tragic figures of the First Age. Glaurung used his cunning to manipulate Túrin, bending the hero's will and leading him to unknowingly bring ruin upon his family. This manipulation was not born of brute force, but of psychological domination, a reflection of Morgoth's influence. Glaurung's attack on Nargothrond, the hidden stronghold of Finrod Felagund, remains one of his most devastating campaigns. The elves of Nargothrond, despite their strength and skill, could not withstand his flames and cunning. Glaurung destroyed the city, reduced its people to despair, and claimed its treasures for himself. His conquest of Nargothrond demonstrated the dragon's role as both destroyers and symbols of Morgoth's corrupting power. Glaurung's death came at the hands of Túrin, who pierced the dragon's belly with a black sword forged by Eärendil, the Dark Elf. Even in death, Glaurung's malice lingered. His final words revealed Túrin's unwitting crimes against his family, driving the hero to despair. With his demise, the First Age lost its first and greatest firedrake. But the devastation he wrought remained a stark reminder of Morgoth's power. While Glaurung embodied Morgoth's initial success in creating dragons, Ancalagon the Black represented the pinnacle of his designs. Introduced during the War of Wrath, Ancalagon was the first and mightiest of the winged dragons, a creature of unimaginable size and destructive power. The War of Wrath was the final conflict of the First Age, in which the Valar and their allies came to Middle-earth to confront Morgoth directly. Faced with this overwhelming force, Morgoth unleashed his most terrible creations in a desperate bid to turn the tide. The appearance of Ancalagon and the other winged dragons marked a turning point in the war, as these airborne terrors brought devastation on an unprecedented scale. Ancalagon was described as being so immense that his shadow alone spread terror across the battlefield. His ability to rain fire from above gave Morgoth's forces a decisive advantage, allowing them to strike from both the land and the sky. The winged dragons overwhelmed their enemies, scattering the armies of the Valar and laying waste to vast regions of Beleriand. Despite his power, Ancalagon met his end in one of the most dramatic moments of the First Age. Eärendil, the mariner who bore the Silmaril, confronted Ancalagon in the skies above Morgoth's fortress of Angband. With the aid of the great eagles, led by Eärendil, Eärendil engaged Ancalagon in a battle that lasted for an entire day. When Ancalagon finally fell, his immense body shattered the volcanic peaks of Nargothrond, a testament to his unparalleled size and strength. Ancalagon's defeat marked the turning point of the War of Wrath, leading to Morgoth's ultimate capture and the end of the First Age. Yet the devastation wrought by the winged dragons lingered, and the scars they left on the land were a reminder of their terrible power. With the fall of Morgoth and the destruction of Angband, the dragon's dominance came to an end. Many of Morgoth's creations were destroyed in the War of Wrath, and the dragons were no exception. The great winged dragons, including Ancalagon, leaving only a few scattered remnants of their kind. The dragons of the First Age were more than instruments of war. They were symbols of Morgoth's malice and the consequences of his rebellion against LOTR. Through Glaurung's cunning and Ancalagon's sheer might, they embodied the extremes of destruction and domination. Their presence shaped the history of the First Age, influencing events that would echo through Middle-earth for ages to come. As the Second Age dawned, the dragons' power waned, but their impact remained indelible, a shadow over the free peoples and a reminder of the horrors Morgoth had unleashed. With the fall of Morgoth at the end of the First Age, the dragons that had terrorized Eärendil were all but broken. Ancalagon the Black and his kin, unleashed in a final act of defiance during the War of Wrath, were defeated alongside their master. The cataclysmic battles left most of Morgoth's monstrous creations destroyed. But a handful of dragons survived, retreating into the farthest reaches of Middle-earth. These remnants, though fewer in number and diminished in influence, remained formidable creatures whose presence haunted the Second Age. The surviving dragons scattered into the uncharted wildernesses of the north, where they would pose a threat for centuries to come. They no longer acted as a unified force under a dark master as they had under Morgoth's will. Instead, they became solitary predators, driven by their insatiable hunger for wealth and their inherent malice. It was during this age that a new type of dragon began to emerge, the cold drakes, creatures that lacked the fiery breath of their predecessors, but were no less dangerous for it. In the absence of Morgoth's guiding hand, the dragons adapted to the changing world. The cold drakes, in particular, rose to prominence during the Second Age. These dragons lacked the devastating ability to breathe fire, but their immense size, armored scales, and brute strength made them formidable adversaries. They often prowled the northern regions of Middle-earth, far from the settled lands of elves and men, finding a natural home in the Grey Mountains. It was here, in the cold and rugged expanses of the Grey Mountains, that the cold drakes began to prey upon the dwarves. the dwarves, known for their mastery of stonecraft and their unyielding spirit, had long been the stewards of great wealth, hoarding treasures mined from the depths of their halls. The lure of gold and mithril, along with the promise of vast cavernous spaces to claim as their own, drew the dragons to the dwarves' strongholds. The cold drakes posed a significant threat to the dwarves of the Second Age, particularly those in the Grey Mountains and surrounding regions. These dragons would descend upon the dwarven halls, attacking with unrelenting ferocity. Their hardened scales rendered them nearly impervious to the axes and hammers of the dwarves, while their strength allowed them to tear through stone fortifications with ease. The dwarves, though fierce and valiant, often found themselves overwhelmed by the relentless assaults of these creatures. The attacks of the cold drakes not only cost the dwarves dearly in terms of lives and resources, but also forced them to abandon some of their northern strongholds. The once prosperous halls of the Grey Mountains became battlegrounds, with treasures lost to the dragons' insatiable greed. These events marked a turning point for the dwarves of this region, forcing them to focus their efforts on survival rather than expansion. While the cold drakes were a persistent threat to the dwarves, dragons as a whole played a limited role in the wider events of the Second Age. Unlike the First Age, which saw dragons deployed as weapons in Morgoth's wars, the scattered survivors of the Second Age lacked the cohesion and purpose they once had. They became solitary predators, more interested in hoarding wealth than in influencing the political and military struggles of the age. The great conflicts of the Second Age, the rise of Numenor, the forging of the Rings of Power, and the wars against Sauron, largely unfolded without the direct involvement of dragons. Sauron, Morgoth's most powerful lieutenant, did not wield dragons in the way his master had, perhaps because he lacked Morgoth's ability to dominate their will. Instead, Sauron relied on other dark creatures, such as orcs and trolls, as well as his own sorcery, to wage his wars. This absence of dragons from the major conflicts of the Second Age contributed to their gradual decline in influence. While they remained fearsome and dangerous, their actions were localized, often limited to skirmishes with the dwarves and isolated attacks in the northern regions. By the end of the Second Age, the dragons of Middle-earth were already a fading force. Their numbers had been severely diminished during the War of Wrath, and their isolated nature made them vulnerable to the passage of time. Unlike the elves, who could endure the ages, or the dwarves, who thrived in their strongholds, dragons relied on their strength and cunning to survive. Without Morgoth's dark will to unite them, they became scattered relics of a bygone era. Despite this decline, the legacy of the dragons persisted. The tales of their attacks on the dwarves and their hoards of stolen treasures became part of the lore of Middle-earth, passed down through generations. The dwarves of the Grey Mountains bore the scars of their encounters with cold drakes, their halls left in ruins as a testament to the enduring danger these creatures posed. By the time the Second Age gave way to the Third, the once mighty dragons of Middle-earth had dwindled to a shadow of their former glory. Morgoth's defeat at the end of the First Age and the losses suffered during the War of Wrath had left their numbers few. The cold drakes that terrorized the northern realms in the Second Age continued to haunt the mountains in the early centuries of the Third. But their presence grew sporadic, and their power steadily diminished. Yet, even in decline, dragons remained formidable, their rarity only heightening the fear they inspired. While most of their kind faded into remote obscurity, one dragon rose to infamous prominence: Smaug the Golden. His insatiable greed and unmatched ferocity would come to define the Third Age, cementing his place as the last great dragon of Middle-earth. As the Third Age began, cold drakes continued to pose a threat in the northern regions, particularly in the Grey Mountains, where they had long plagued the dwarves. These dragons, though lacking the fiery breath of the fire drakes, were no less deadly. Their immense strength and armored hides made them nearly impervious to conventional weapons, and their cunning made them adept predators. The dwarves of Durin's line had reclaimed some measure of their strength after the tribulations of the Second Age settled in their halls within the Grey Mountains. They prospered for a time, mining the wealth of the earth and building their fortunes anew. However, the presence of cold drakes in the region brought relentless challenges. The dragons' raids were devastating, not only for the treasures they plundered, but for the lives and halls lost in the process. The attack reached a peak in the early Third Age, culminating in fierce battles between the dwarves and the cold drakes. The conflict was costly, forcing the dwarves to abandon many of their once prosperous strongholds in the Grey Mountains. Driven from their homes, many dwarves scattered across Middle-earth. Some sought refuge in Erebor, the lonely mountain, while others migrated to more secure locations such as the Iron Hills. These events marked the beginning of the dragon's retreat from prominence. The cold drakes, though victorious in their raids, became increasingly isolated, their numbers too few to maintain their dominance. By the mid-Third Age, their appearances became rare, and their threat diminished, paving the way for the rise of a singular dragon who would eclipse them all. Smaug, a fire drake of extraordinary power, emerged in the later centuries of the Third Age. Unlike the cold drakes of the Grey Mountains, Smaug possessed the devastating ability to breathe fire, and his insatiable greed for wealth drove him to seek the grandest hoards in Middle-earth. Though little is known of his origins, His rise as a force of terror was swift and decisive. Drawn by the wealth amassed by the dwarves of Erebor, Smaug descended upon the lonely mountain in 2770. At the time, Erebor stood as a beacon of prosperity, its halls filled with treasures mined from the mountain's depths. The nearby city of Dale thrived under the dwarves' protection, its people benefiting from trade and friendship with their neighbors. Smaug's attack was sudden and overwhelming. With his fiery breath and immense strength, he laid waste to Dale, reducing the city to ash. The dwarves of Erebor, despite their resilience, were unprepared for such an assault. Smaug tore through the mountain's defenses, slaughtering those who stood against him and driving the survivors into exile. Within hours, the once thriving kingdom of Erebor had fallen. Smaug claimed a lonely mountain as his own, turning its vast halls into his lair. There, he sprawled atop the immense hoard of gold, jewels, and mithril that the dwarves had spent centuries accumulating. His greed knew no bounds. He jealously guarded his stolen treasure, ensuring that no one approached without facing his wrath. Smaug's presence in Erebor cast a long shadow over the surrounding lands. The once prosperous region became desolate, its people scattered, and its cities abandoned. The dwarves of Durin's line, now exiles, wandered Middle-earth, seeking refuge and dreaming of reclaiming their home. Thorin Oakenshield, the heir to Erebor, carried the weight of this loss, vowing to one day avenge his people and restore their kingdom. Smaug's reign over Erebor had consequences that extended far beyond the lonely mountain. His presence disrupted trade and prosperity throughout the region, leaving the lands around Dale impoverished and vulnerable. His reputation as a fearsome and cunning creature grew, spreading fear across Middle-earth. In The Hobbit, Smaug's role as a central antagonist showcases his immense power and the danger he posed to even the bravest adventurers. Bilbo Baggins, chosen by Gandalf to aid Thorin and his company in reclaiming Erebor, experienced Smaug's wrath firsthand. Smaug also held symbolic significance in Tolkien's narrative. As a creature consumed by greed and driven by an unquenchable lust for gold, he represented the corrupting influence of wealth and power. His destruction of Erebor and Dale stood as a testament to the consequences of unchecked avarice, a theme that resonated throughout Tolkien's work. Smaug's death came at the hands of Bard the Bowman, a descendant of the Lords of Dale. In 2941 of the Third Age, Thorin and his company succeeded in reaching Erebor, drawing Smaug's attention. Enraged by the intrusion, Smaug unleashed his fury upon Lake Town, the human settlement on the Long Lake. As Smaug descended upon the town, spreading fire and destruction, Bard took up a great black arrow, his family's heirloom, and loosed it into the sky. Guided by the knowledge of a vulnerable spot in Smaug's underbelly, a flaw in his otherwise impenetrable armor, Bard's arrow struck true. The dragon fell from the sky, his fiery body crashing into the lake, extinguishing his life in a final burst of fury. The death of Smaug marked the end of the great dragons of Middle-earth. With his fall, the last vestige of Morgoth's terrible creations was extinguished. Yet Smaug's demise also brought renewal. The dwarves of Durin's line reclaimed Erebor. Bard restored the kingdom of Dale, and the region began to heal from centuries of desolation. With the death of Smaug and the reclaiming of Erebor in the Third Age, the last great dragon of Middle-earth passed into legend. Though their fiery breath and devastating presence no longer haunted the free peoples, the memory of dragons lingered, woven into the fabric of Middle-earth's history and culture. These creatures, crafted by Morgoth in the early days of the First Age, left behind a legacy far greater than their physical forms. A legacy of fear, caution, and symbolic meaning that shaped the world long after their extinction. Dragons in Tolkien's legendarium are not merely creatures of physical power. They embody greed and corruption in their most destructive forms. Morgoth designed them as instruments of domination, but their behavior also reflected the flaws of their creator. Just as Morgoth sought to hoard and control the light of the Two Trees and the Silmarils, so too did dragons hoard treasures, driven by an insatiable hunger for wealth that extended beyond need or reason. The dragon's greed was more than a physical compulsion. It was a symbol of moral corruption. Their hoards, vast and glittering, became prisons for their avarice, locking them into an endless cycle of possession and paranoia. Smaug's obsession with the treasures of Erebor, for example, mirrored Morgoth's fixation on the Silmarils, showing how greed could consume even the mightiest of beings. This symbolic connection between dragons and greed is evident in the stories of those who encountered them. The dwarves of Durin's line, with their own deep love of gold and gems, often clashed with dragons in ways that underscored the dangers of avarice. The destruction of Nargothrond by Glaurung and the fall of Erebor to Smaug serve as cautionary tales, warning of the perils of unchecked desire for material wealth. Dragons left an indelible mark on the histories and cultures of the free peoples, their deeds shaping events and inspiring caution for generations. No race in Middle-earth felt the impact of dragons more deeply than the dwarves. Their wealth, mined from the depths of the mountains, drew dragons like moths to flame. From the First Age, when Glaurung destroyed Nargothrond, to the Third Age, when Smaug claimed Erebor, the dwarves suffered greatly at the claws of these creatures. The dwarves' battles with dragons were not only physical, but also existential. their love for crafting beautiful things, gold, mithril, and gemstones, was part of their very nature, instilled in them by their maker, Aule. Yet this love often brought them into conflict with dragons, whose greed outstripped even their own. Over time, the stories of these encounters became part of dwarven lore, shaping their culture and attitudes toward wealth and cautioning against the dangers of greed. The legacy of dragons also shaped the lives of men, particularly those in the regions most affected by their presence. The destruction of Dale and Laketown by Smaug cast long shadows over the history of these communities. The heroism of Bard the Bowman, who slew Smaug with his black arrow, became a celebrated tale among men, symbolizing the triumph of courage and skill over overwhelming odds. The stories of dragon slayers like Bard endured as part of the folklore of Middle-earth, inspiring songs and legends that served as reminders of the resilience of men. Dragons, though feared, also became symbols of challenges overcome. Their defeat seen as acts of defiance against the forces of darkness. While the elves had fewer direct encounters with dragons after the First Age, their memories of these creatures were profound. Glaurung's role in the tragedies of Túrin Turambar and Nina remained etched in elven lore, serving as a somber reminder of the dragon's cunning and malice. For the elves, dragons were also linked to their long struggle against Morgoth. The great battles of the First Age, in which dragons played a central role, shaped their understanding of the dangers posed by unchecked power. These memories lived on in their songs and histories, preserving the cautionary lessons of the past. Even after their extinction, dragons remained a potent presence in the imaginations of Middle-earth's peoples. Their stories were retold in song and verse, preserving their legacy as both warnings and wonders. The tales of Glaurung, Ancalagon, and Smaug became part of the cultural fabric of Middle-earth, serving as both historical records and moral lessons. The memory of dragons also influenced how treasure hoards were viewed. Gold and jewels, once symbols of prosperity and craftsmanship, became tinged with danger in the context of dragon lore. Hoards of wealth, left unguarded or unclaimed, were seen not only as tempting prizes, but as potential sources of corruption, capable of drawing greed and strife to those who sought them. Dragons also became symbolic of the struggles that defined Middle-earth. The tension between creation and destruction, the pursuit of power, and the dangers of ambition unchecked by wisdom. Through their stories, the peoples of Middle-earth were reminded of the costs of greed and the importance of resisting its allure. Dragons, as beings of immense power and destruction, were deeply tied to the broader themes of Tolkien's work. They were not only reflections of Morgoth's malice, but also mirrors of the darker aspects of those who encountered them. Their hoards symbolized the weight of greed, their presence a reminder of the consequences of ambition. Yet, Alongside their destructive legacy, dragons also inspired acts of courage, resistance, and resilience. The slaying of Smaug, the reclamation of Erebor, and the triumphs of Túrin and Bard showed that even the mightiest of creatures could be overcome by determination and skill. These stories, passed down through generations, became a source of hope as much as caution. As Middle-earth moved into the Fourth Age, the memory of dragons persisted, their stories continuing to shape the world they had once terrorized. Though their fiery breath and vast shadows had vanished, the lessons they left behind endured, a legacy as unyielding as the mountains they once called home. And so, dear travelers, the tale of the dragons comes to an end. Their fiery breath, now a distant memory, and their mighty forms lost to the passage of time. Yet their stories endure, woven into the fabric of Middle-earth's history, a reminder of the strength and resilience of its peoples. As you close your eyes tonight, let the echoes of these ancient tales carry you into dreams of faraway mountains and forgotten hoards. Imagine the peaceful quiet of a world where the last dragon has flown, and all that remains is the soft song of memory. Rest well, my friends, and good night.